Imagine discovering that something as simple as what you apply to your body before sleep could quietly influence your confidence, your energy, and even the way you show up in intimate moments. Yet almost nobody talks about it in a way that feels real, practical, and grounded in everyday life. Most men focus on daytime habits, workouts, or quick fixes. But what happens at night, when your body is repairing itself, is where some of the most powerful changes are actually shaped. Tonight, I want to walk you through a concept that blends ancient body care practices with modern understanding of male physiology and psychological readiness, not as a miracle trick, but as a nighttime ritual that helps you feel more grounded in your own body, more connected to your partner, and more stable in your performance over time. There is a quiet truth that many overlook. Performance, especially in intimacy, is not just about physical ability. It is deeply tied to circulation, stress levels, skin sensitivity, hormonal balance, and even the mental narrative you carry about yourself when no one is watching. When a man feels tense, disconnected, or fatigued, his body reflects that in subtle but noticeable ways. And when he feels calm, restored, and present, everything from stamina to responsiveness tends to align more naturally. This is where the idea of a nighttime oil routine comes in, not as something magical, but as a consistent practice that signals to your nervous system that it is safe to relax, recover, and rebuild. Think about how your body transitions at night. Blood flow shifts, testosterone regulation follows its natural rhythm, and your nervous system moves from alert mode into repair mode. If you support that transition instead of disrupting it, you create a foundation that can influence how you feel the next day in very real ways. Many traditional systems of wellness have long used oils for this exact reason, not only for skin health but for grounding the body, improving tactile awareness, and promoting relaxation through gentle self-contact and absorption. When applied thoughtfully, certain oils can help improve skin hydration and sensitivity, which may enhance physical awareness and responsiveness. More importantly, the act of slow, intentional self-care before sleep sends a psychological message that you are not operating in stress mode anymore, and that shift alone can change how your body behaves over time. Now, before going deeper, it is important to understand that this is not about quick enhancement or unrealistic expectations. It is about consistency, nervous system regulation, and creating a ritual that your mind begins to associate with calm confidence. The routine itself is simple in structure, but powerful in repetition. It begins with creating a moment of pause at night, where you step away from screens, distractions, and mental overload. This is not just about hygiene or skincare. It is about transition. Your body needs cues to move from external performance pressure into internal restoration. Once you create that space, the oil becomes more than just a product. It becomes a tool for reconnection with your own physical state. When applied slowly, with attention, it encourages you to become aware of areas of tension that you normally ignore throughout the day. That awareness alone can reduce stress accumulation, which is one of the silent contributors to performance issues over time. Stress does not just stay in your mind. It shows up in muscle tightness, reduced circulation, and lower energy availability. By introducing a calming ritual, you begin to counteract that accumulation. From a physiological standpoint, gentle massage with oil can support superficial blood flow and relaxation of muscle fibers, which contributes to a sense of warmth and ease in the body. While this is not a medical treatment or a guaranteed enhancement method, it does align with well-established principles of relaxation response activation. On the psychological side, there is another layer that is just as important. Men are often conditioned to associate masculinity with constant output, performance, and control. Rarely are they encouraged to slow down and reconnect with their own bodies without judgment. A nighttime oil routine interrupts that pattern. It introduces a moment where you are not performing for anyone, not proving anything, and not rushing toward an outcome. Instead, you are simply present in your own physical experience. Over time, this can subtly reshape how you perceive intimacy itself. Rather than approaching it with pressure or expectation, you begin to associate it with presence, awareness, and steadiness. That shift is where real improvement often begins, because anxiety is one of the most common barriers to consistent performance satisfaction. Another often overlooked aspect is skin sensitivity and tactile awareness. When the skin is well cared for and regularly stimulated in a calm, non-stressful environment, the nervous system becomes more responsive to touch. This does not mean overstimulation, but rather improved awareness of physical sensation. In intimate contexts, this can translate into a more grounded and connected experience, where you are not mentally distracted or disconnected from what you are feeling. The oil itself acts as a medium that reduces friction, encourages slow movement, and allows your attention to stay focused on sensation rather than discomfort or distraction. Over time, this builds a stronger mind-body connection, which is often more important than any external factor. There is also a deeper emotional component that rarely gets discussed. Many men carry unspoken stress related to performance expectations, even if they do not openly acknowledge it. That internal pressure can create a cycle where the more you try to control outcomes, the more disconnected you become from natural flow. A nightly ritual like this begins to soften that internal pressure. It does not remove responsibility or desire, but it reframes the relationship with your body from something you must control into something you learn to understand. This shift can be surprisingly powerful because it reduces internal resistance, allowing your natural responses to function more freely. In this way, the routine becomes less about the oil itself and more about what it represents. A consistent commitment to calmness, recovery, and self-awareness. As you continue this practice over time, you may notice subtle changes that are not immediate but gradually accumulate. You might feel more rested, more physically present, and less mentally scattered in moments of intimacy. You might find that your confidence becomes less dependent on external validation and more rooted in how you feel internally. These are not dramatic overnight changes, but they are the kind of shifts that build a stronger foundation for long-term well-being in intimate relationships. And this is where the real value of the nighttime oil routine begins to emerge. Not as a trick or shortcut, but as a lifestyle habit that quietly supports your body and mind in working together instead of against each other. At this point, we have set the foundation for understanding why this routine matters and how it interacts with both physical and psychological aspects of male performance. And in the next part, we will go deeper into the specific ways this ritual influences hormonal balance, stress recovery, and the subtle behavioral shifts that often go unnoticed, but play a crucial role in long-term intimacy and confidence as this routine becomes more familiar, Something subtle begins to happen beneath the surface that most men do not immediately recognize. And it is not about sudden physical transformation, but about the way your internal systems start to recalibrate when they are consistently given the signal that stress is no longer in control of your night. The human body, especially the male body, responds deeply to repetition and ritual. And what you do before sleep carries more influence than most people realize, because it is during this window that hormonal regulation, nervous system repair, and mental processing all converge. When you introduce a calming, intentional oil routine into this space, you are not just applying something to the skin, you are essentially teaching your body a new pattern of relaxation that begins to replace accumulated tension patterns built throughout the day. Over time, this can influence how quickly your system downshifts from alertness into recovery, and that shift is where many of the benefits connected to energy, stability, and performance begin to originate. One of the most important aspects to understand here is how stress physiology interacts with male performance. When stress is chronically elevated, the body tends to remain in a state of readiness, where cortisol levels are not fully allowed to settle, and the nervous system stays partially activated even during rest. This does not just affect sleep quality, it also influences how the body prioritizes resources such as energy distribution, blood flow regulation, and recovery efficiency. In simpler terms, when your system is always slightly on guard, it becomes harder for it to fully engage in restorative processes. A nighttime ritual that includes slow application of oil, gentle self-massage, and intentional slowing down acts as a counterbalance to this. It signals safety, not through words or thought, but through physical repetition that your nervous system begins to trust. As this trust builds, the transition into deeper rest becomes smoother, and deeper rest is directly connected to how the body regulates key hormones associated with vitality and performance. While it is not accurate or responsible to claim that any external routine can directly manipulate hormone levels in a guaranteed way, it is well understood that sleep quality, stress reduction, and relaxation patterns all play a supportive role in maintaining healthy hormonal rhythms. What matters here is consistency rather than intensity. Many men look for dramatic changes through extreme routines, but the body responds more reliably to small, repeated signals that reinforce stability. The oil routine works within this principle because it is not aggressive or demanding. It is slow, grounding, and sensory in nature, which makes it particularly effective for calming an overstimulated mind. There is also a psychological dimension that becomes more apparent after repeated practice. When a man engages in a nightly ritual that involves caring for his body with attention and patience, it begins to reshape his internal dialogue. Instead of seeing his body as something that must constantly perform or be corrected, he begins to see it as something that can be supported and understood. This shift in perception is subtle but powerful, especially in the context of intimacy, where confidence is often not about physical perfection, but about how present and comfortable someone feels within themselves. Presence is often misunderstood as something purely mental, but in reality, it is deeply physical. When your body feels tense, your attention scatters. When your body feels relaxed and grounded, your attention stabilizes. The oil routine contributes to this grounding by engaging tactile awareness, which pulls attention away from mental noise and into physical sensation. This is particularly important for men who spend most of their day in high-focus environments, such as work, problem-solving, or digital stimulation. Over time, constant mental activity can create a kind of disconnect between mind and body, where awareness becomes heavily cognitive but less embodied. In intimacy, this disconnect can manifest as overthinking, hesitation, or difficulty staying fully present in the moment. By introducing a simple sensory practice at night, you begin to rebuild that connection in a non-pressured environment. Another layer worth exploring is how touch itself influences emotional regulation. Human touch, even self-applied in a calm and intentional way, has been shown in many contexts to contribute to relaxation responses in the nervous system. This is not about stimulation in an intense sense, but about steady, mindful contact that helps the body recognize safety and familiarity. When applied consistently, this kind of contact can reduce internal resistance and help the body become more receptive to relaxation cues. In the context of performance and intimacy, this can translate into a more natural flow of responsiveness, not because of forced change, but because of reduced internal friction. It is also important to address a common misunderstanding that many men carry, which is the belief that performance is purely mechanical, or driven only by physical strength or endurance. In reality, performance is deeply influenced by emotional state, mental clarity, and nervous system balance. When anxiety is present, the body may be physically capable, but coordination and responsiveness can become less fluid. When calmness is present, the system operates more efficiently because there is less internal resistance competing for attention. The nighttime oil routine indirectly supports this by creating a predictable space where the body learns to unwind. Predictability is powerful for the nervous system because it reduces uncertainty, and reduced uncertainty leads to reduced stress activation. Over time, this can create a baseline state of calm that carries into other areas of life, including intimate situations. Another often overlooked benefit is how this routine can improve body awareness. Many men are disconnected from subtle physical signals such as tension buildup, fatigue patterns, or early signs of stress accumulation. By engaging in a slow, attentive routine, you begin to notice these signals more clearly. This awareness does not just help with relaxation. It also helps you respond earlier to your body's needs, rather than pushing through discomfort until it becomes more pronounced. In intimate contexts, this awareness can translate into better pacing, better responsiveness to your partner, and a more intuitive understanding of physical and emotional flow. It is not about control, but about attunement. There is also a relational dimension to consider. When a man develops a stronger sense of internal stability and calmness, it often changes the dynamic of intimacy in subtle ways. Confidence becomes less about proving something and more about being present. This presence is often felt by a partner, even without words, because emotional and physical states are communicated through tone, energy, and responsiveness. A grounded individual tends to create a more relaxed and connected environment, which naturally supports deeper intimacy. This is why practices that seem personal or individual in nature often have relational effects over time. As the routine continues to integrate into your nightly rhythm, you may also notice that your sleep itself becomes more restorative. This is not because of any single factor, but because the combination of reduced stress, improved relaxation cues, and slower mental pacing creates a more favorable environment for rest. Better rest, in turn, supports energy regulation and recovery, which indirectly influences how you feel during the day and how you show up in intimate situations. Everything becomes interconnected in a gradual feedback loop rather than isolated effects. At this stage, the routine is no longer just something you do before bed. It becomes part of how you transition between states of activity and rest, between external demands and internal recovery. And as this transition becomes smoother, the overall experience of your physical and emotional presence begins to shift in ways that feel more natural, more stable, and less influenced by daily fluctuations. In the next part, we will go deeper into how this practice can reshape long-term confidence, emotional resilience, and the subtle ways it influences intimacy dynamics over time, bringing everything together into a complete understanding of how such a simple nighttime habit can quietly support multiple layers of male well-being. As this practice continues over weeks and months, the most noticeable changes are rarely loud or dramatic, but instead they show up in the quiet spaces of your life, in how you carry yourself when no one is watching, in how quickly your mind settles after a stressful day, and in how naturally your body begins to feel like it is working with you instead of against you. This is where the deeper transformation of a nighttime oil routine begins to reveal itself, not as something that boosts performance in an instant, but as something that slowly rebuilds the relationship between your nervous system, your emotional state, and your physical presence. Many men underestimate how much their internal state shapes their external experience in intimacy, assuming it is only about physical capability, when in reality, emotional grounding and nervous system stability are often the hidden foundation beneath consistent confidence. When your body is regularly exposed to calm, repetitive sensory rituals at night, it starts to associate stillness with safety rather than inactivity. That distinction matters because a nervous system that interprets stillness as safe will naturally recover more efficiently, while a nervous system that associates stillness with unresolved stress will remain partially activated even during rest. Over time, the oil routine becomes a kind of signal that tells your body the day is complete, the pressure is off, and there is no need to remain in a heightened state of readiness. This subtle recalibration can influence not only sleep quality, but also the emotional tone you carry into your relationships. One of the most powerful long-term effects of this kind of ritual is the development of embodied confidence. This is different from surface-level confidence that depends on external validation or momentary success. Embodied confidence is quieter, more stable, and less reactive to circumstances. It comes from a sense of familiarity with your own body and its responses. When you regularly engage in mindful self-care, you begin to reduce internal tension that often goes unnoticed but accumulates throughout the day. That reduction in tension allows your natural baseline to feel calmer, and from that calmer baseline, performance becomes less about effort and more about flow. In intimate situations, this can translate into a more natural presence, where you are not mentally over-monitoring yourself or trying to control outcomes, but instead responding to the moment as it unfolds. This kind of presence is often what people perceive as genuine confidence, even though it is actually the absence of internal conflict rather than the addition of something external. There is also an emotional healing aspect to consider. Many men carry unconscious pressure related to expectations, past experiences, or internalized beliefs about performance and masculinity. These pressures do not disappear through logic alone. They often need to be softened through consistent bodily experiences that contradict the sense of tension they create. A slow, grounding nighttime ritual introduces a counter-experience. Instead of urgency, there is slowness. Instead of pressure, there is care. Instead of judgment, there is attention without expectation. Over time, this repeated contrast can help reduce the emotional charge associated with performance anxiety. As that charge decreases, the body becomes less reactive in situations where it would previously tighten or overthink. This is not a sudden shift, but a gradual unwinding of conditioned responses. Another important dimension is how this routine can improve emotional resilience in relationships. Intimacy is not only physical, it is also deeply influenced by emotional regulation. When a person is more regulated, they are less likely to react impulsively, withdraw under stress, or become overwhelmed by minor fluctuations in connection. The oil routine indirectly supports this by strengthening your baseline capacity to return to calm. Each night becomes a practice of returning, of letting go of accumulated stimulation, and of recentering yourself in your own physical experience. Over time, this repetition builds a kind of internal stability that carries into interactions with others. You begin to notice that small stresses do not destabilize you as easily, and that emotional exchanges feel less like pressure and more like communication. In the context of intimacy, this stability can be deeply impactful because it creates a space where both partners feel less tension and more ease. It is also important to understand that this practice does not replace communication, connection, or relational effort. Instead, it enhances your internal foundation so that those elements can function more naturally. A man who is grounded in his own body tends to be more attentive, more responsive, and less distracted by internal noise. This does not come from trying harder, but from carrying less internal friction into the interaction. Over time, this can subtly shift the quality of intimacy from something performance-oriented to something more connected and present. There is also a long-term physiological rhythm that benefits from consistency. The human body thrives on cycles, and nighttime routines are particularly influential because they align with natural recovery processes. When you repeatedly engage in a calming ritual before sleep, your body begins to anticipate rest more efficiently. This can lead to smoother transitions into sleep and a more stable recovery cycle overall. While this does not guarantee any specific outcome, it supports the conditions under which energy regulation and vitality are more effectively maintained. In this way, the routine becomes part of a larger system of self-maintenance rather than a standalone habit. What makes this approach powerful is its simplicity. There is no complexity to manage, no performance pressure to achieve, and no external validation required. It is a private, personal space where you reconnect with your own physical presence in a consistent way. Over time, this consistency builds trust within yourself. You begin to trust that you can slow down without losing control, that you can rest without guilt, and that your body is capable of returning to balance when given the right conditions. That internal trust is one of the most underrated components of confidence in intimacy. As we bring everything together, the nighttime oil routine is not about the oil itself, nor is it about chasing enhancement or fixing a problem. It is about creating a repeated experience of calm, awareness, an embodied presence that gradually reshapes how your nervous system responds to stress, how your mind relates to your body, and how you show up in intimate moments. The real transformation happens quietly, in the background, as your system learns a new baseline of ease. From that baseline, everything else becomes more natural, more stable, and more connected. And ultimately, the most meaningful change is not just in performance, but in how you experience yourself, your relationships, and the moments of closeness that matter most.